Oh, it might be working.
It says streaming now.
Okay, good. Okay, so let me make this small. Okay, okay. Is it still streaming?
It says meeting is now streaming live on YouTube.
Excellent. Okay, so here we are, everybody. This is take two. Welcome to a very special edition of the Green Nurse podcast. My name is Sherry Tutkus, where we bring hope and inspiration for growth and healing. The Green Nurse podcast and our platform, we like to talk about progressive treatments to relieve suffering, to improve quality of life. We talk about subjects that might be difficult for some people to listen to, or they're not interested in. However, there's a lot of people that are out there that are interested in these topics, and we want to talk about them to decrease stigma around these issues, because we're finding that a lot of these progressive alternative healing therapies and multiple plant medicines that exist are truly helping people reach new levels of wellness healing faster. So today we're going to talk about spirituality and plant medicine. I am presenting in December on spirituality as the root of cannabis care. And today we're going to include psychedelics into this conversation. I am a founding member of the International Association of Psychedelic Nurses. This topic is extremely, extremely important because I've seen how it has helped so many different people, including myself, in moving through mental, emotional, spiritual crises that help us to function in a different way when we experience these experiences for healing. So today I have a very special guest on, Elise Bronstein. She's a Reiki Master and podcast producer and host of Beautiful People. She's going to share her experiences with ayahuasca and how that improved the quality of her life and the benefits that she's seeing today. She's also going to share first her 10-day silent Vipassana meditation retreat and how that helped her mental, emotional, and spiritual self, which then led her to do her ayahuasca treatment. She's also going to tell her about her podcast, what compelled her to start doing her podcast journalism, broadcast journalism, and the types of guests she has on and how she chooses them. So I'm really, really excited to have Elise back on here on take two. Welcome to the podcast, Elise.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm always loving the conversations that we share together. And it's really important that people do become more aware of these different health modalities that have so incredibly helped me.
Yes. So
So,
we're going to start with, so we don't all wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to do psychedelics, or hey, I'm going to go on an ayahuasca trip, or hey,
mhm.
generally there's a story, a back end story that propels us to start exploring, getting educated, inquiring information, and then to actually take that step to experience it. So tell us about your 10-day silent Vipassana meditation retreat, what that
Mhm.
was like, and then we'll get into the next part of our interview.
So I went on a date with a guy, and he said to me that he had just gotten back from a 10-day silent Vipassana meditation retreat that I had completely no idea about, but I went home that night and immediately signed up. At that time in my life, I was very confused about my life purpose. I felt incredibly unaligned with the position that I had at work, and I knew that something had to change. But in order to do any change, I knew that I had to stop fighting against myself. And that's what I was doing. I was blaming myself for the resentment that I had towards my boss, but it was just me. So I knew that I had to do something. So I signed up for the 10-day silent meditation retreat. And what it's called is Vipassana meditation. I did it in Shelburne, Massachusetts. They have them all over the world, and they're donation based. So if you get something out of it, then you donate. And the whole place functions on donations, which is incredible. The food is all organic. The living facility is beautiful. And the water you drink is so fresh and pure. It's well water. The location is incredible. And the one in Shelburne, Massachusetts happens to be one of the first built pagoda cells locations in the US. It's really incredible and just like so sacred. Vipassana means to see things as they really are. It is a logical process of mental refinement through self-observation. So
Right.
the technique, what it teaches you And what it taught me is every day you get more and more and deeper into your subconscious mind. There's no reading, no writing, no talking, no eye contact. This seems like it would be so hard because you're with other people, but everyone honors the process. And every day that you become more and more inside of yourself, you understand the work and the confusing process that it takes. So you don't want to kind of pop anyone else's bubble. Like, everyone's here to understand the techniques. So let's just have our experience. And then at the end of the 10 days, we all come together out in a day of integration. So in this process, they teach you throughout the days that it's very impossible to share on this technique because it's so personal experience based. So you can't even go to a Vipassana center for 3 days or 2 days until you do the 10 days. Because the 10 days kind of, I guess it would be like you pop the cap open of understanding what the technique could bring. But what it is if you breathe through your nose, you can feel the breath of your nose on your upper lip. And this breath on your upper lip grounds you. So you can feel yourself breathing. You can feel it. And every day that you sit down and you can feel this breath on your upper lip, the sensation becomes stronger. And through the process of the 10 days, you wake up at 4:30, you go to bed at 9:30 p.m. And it's a bell schedule that's very regimented. So you wake up to a bell, you go to the meditation hall. After meditation, you go to breakfast, and it becomes a flow. Your day is very much understood without communication necessary. If you need help, you can obviously talk to the main lead teacher. But what I learned throughout this process and through trying to grasp the technique, so you focus on your breath, and then as the days go on, you learn to bring the breath up and focus on the sensations that you feel in your body. So there's no mantra, you just breath and sensations.
So
So
breath and feeling your body. So just really inhabiting,
yes,
embodying your body.
fully embodying your body. And at the end of the 10 days, you learn to kind of take the sensations that you feel on your head, on your arms, on the back of your legs, everywhere. You go up and down the body and you understand the sensations that happen. On the 4th day, we had a 2-hour sit, which was the first 2 hours of not moving. Some people, I chose to do crisscross applesauce. Some people will sit against a wall. Some people will sit on a chair. And when you're sitting for 2 hours, after the 2 hours, I was in excruciating pain. And then suddenly I noticed that there's tears flowing down my face. It's like hysterically crying, but silence. And I'm in bliss. So everything, I don't feel the pain anymore. It's the excruciating pain that I thought my legs were going to fall off completely in a snap switched to this blissful feeling of euphoria. It was an actual like sober drug feeling that made me realize how impermanence is life, how quick it was to change from this excruciating pain to this blissful feeling.
Light
What it
switch.
also cute instantly. And what was also amazing about that 2-hour sit that I learned about myself was that I was always trying to be first. So the bell rang, I would run to the line. I would want to be first in the morning. I just always needed to be first. And in that experience, I was last for everything. I was the last one in the meditation hall because I had to process what happened. I was the last one to go to the lunch. Like all day, I was just slower than usual. And it felt so good. And what those tears showed for me was that it was so much blockage that needed to be released. And because I'm someone that chooses not to cry in front of people because I'm so strong and powerful and that's who I am, it was through those tears that I released just all of this stuck, what they're called in Vipassana meditation are sankharas, just these stuck blockages that are trapped from a very young age that are only able to get out through the silence and through the breath and through the deep eradication of suffering lodged in the body.
Wow. That's really, really powerful. Wow. Amazing. So I find it very amazing because breath work has truly been a way to help me to reset my central nervous system and helping me to change perspective, because oftentimes when we have that constricting feeling from whatever's going on outside of ourselves, we don't breathe. We hold
Right.
our breath because, you know, it's like the fear sets in, and then the breath is all about spirit, you know, the deep inhale in, bringing that oxygen in to our bodies, right? To have that oxygen exchange in our lungs. And then the exhale is just releasing it and moving spirit. So I look at breath work as inhaling spirit, and the exhale is allowing it to circulate through my body. Really, really powerful stuff. So through that experience of 10 days, what was the pivotal point, or what was it in that experience, or over the course of you integrating the 10 days of silence, did you realize that, you know what, I want to experience more healing? I think I'm going to check out the other plants. So what propelled you into that part?
So when I did the Vipassana meditation, I had been really into self-help, self-development podcasts. And I just love podcasting. Even ones that aren't about self-development, I just really found it fascinating. And through the Joe Rogan podcast, I found a podcast, the Aubrey Marcus podcast, which was about ayahuasca. So this was a long time ago that it planted a seed in my mind. Oh, ayahuasca exists. But all the times that people around me would say, oh, I want to do ayahuasca, I would say, absolutely not. I'm not ready for that. So after doing the 10 days and understanding that I understood myself enough to have 10 days of silence with myself, I trust myself, then I was ready to ask or just invite ayahuasca into my life. And the way that I saw it was, when I'm ready, it will come to me. And when it did come to me, I was ready. This was a year and a half, maybe. Yeah, it was a year and a half after my Vipassana meditation. And I knew that I had a solid foundation, but I was still scared. I had done so much research. So for anyone listening, ayahuasca is a sacred, sacred, sacred plant. I encourage you to learn about it, read about podcasts. It's a plant root that is brewed into a tea, and it is sacred, and you must honor it. And it is not a joke. And the point
It's
of
not
it
recreational. That's the bottom line.
no,
So
yeah,
I'm going to say anything about psychedelics and working with psychedelics and plant and entheogens. Truly, you know, there are people that do have recreational experiences, but for our conversation and purposes here, we're looking at it from a true healing perspective, for
yes,
mental, emotional, and spiritual healing that so many people have a difficult time even looking at or addressing. So I commend you on saying that, because it is important for people that are listening to understand, you know, that it is serious, it is sacred. You know, you're connecting to an aspect of yourself that you've never connected to.
right. And it's dark. It's very dark. So when I went into the Aya ceremony, I didn't know what to expect, and I had no expectations, but I was taught everything that I need. And flash forward, that 2 years ago was my first ayahuasca ceremony. I'm a completely different person. And there is nothing truer to me than how sacred and beautiful plant medicines are. In my ceremony, before going into my ceremony, I was struggling with body image issues, with food issues, with the way that I was nourishing myself, with the love that I had for myself, and the relationship that I was able to create, because I was so imbalanced in the relationship that I had with myself. Like I was overeating, undereating, dieting, just all this fucked up way that I just wasn't right, and it wasn't pure, and it wasn't who I am. And after my ayahuasca ceremony, it was one of the most challenging, and it was so hard. I peed my pants. I vomited all over myself. I honestly thought I was going to poop my pants. I was crying. I was begging for mercy. And I also saw parts of myself that I was so blinded by in reality. Like it was so, I went back into my mother's womb. I felt the way that she felt before she had me. It was all of these parts of myself that I didn't want to see. But additionally, I would just like to add that the way that Aya works through people is the way that they need. So some people in their ayahuasca experiences will be talking to trees and will be riding on dragons because that's what they need. and some people will be extremely suffering. Some people will be talking to dead grandparents. But the way that the medicine works through you, it knows before you even know. So the medicine ceremony started for me a month before I decided to even do it. So it's like the whole
intention. It's your
yeah,
intention, right? So
exactly.
what I am intending, I care, I love myself enough to know that I want to use this plant in a way to improve my mental, emotional, spiritual health, and hopefully it will help my physical body. So you had
Exactly.
the intention. So even very similar to when I'm educating about cannabis, I always teach there's 3 ways to use it:
Mhm.
medically, recreationally, and irresponsibly. And it all has to do with your intention. And intention is so important when it
It's
comes to
so
healing,
important.
you know?
100%. And what's so beautiful about the medicine is that the teachings that it gives to every single person are so different because we're all so different. But what it gave me that night was everything I needed. And I remember the next morning, I remember the next morning waking up and just being a completely different person. Like I was like, there is nothing that it's impossible for me to ever go back to the way I was because I just saw myself in so much truth and in so much darkness that I honor what that was. And I have talked to so many people that have done ayahuasca even before I did that ceremony that night that were telling me, I was addicted to Adderall. I was addicted to depression medication. And after doing ayahuasca, I'm done.
Yeah.
And what it does is it rewires something and creates such a strong experiences and works through you in the way that you need to heal yourself. And
So
I feel
I'll,
like
yeah. So I'll like, so for people that are new and watching, when they say that is these different entheogens and spirit medicines and plant medicines and sacred ceremony medicines help to open up areas of your brain that have not been opened before. It's called neuroplasticity. So it opens up different areas of your brain, and different areas of your brain start to communicate in ways that it wasn't able to before. That is what I find so powerful, is that, it starts to make these connections that you'd never had before. And so when you have the experience can look vastly different for other people. But then over time, like you said, you start to integrate all of the different learnings that this plant taught you while you were in that experience. And the integration happens over time.
mhm. It's interesting because so everything that I learned that night, I wasn't sure about, but I was very clear about the lessons that it had set forth for me. So everything changed when I got back. And everything changed. It doesn't mean that I'm perfect and I'm like this angel enlightened person, because it has nothing to do with ego when it comes to this. I peed my pants and vomited all over myself. Like I was vulnerable and really, really just raw and open. So trusting the
Process.
individual, yeah, trusting the process. And I just can't imagine not going within for the healing. Like
Yeah.
it's so everything was within me. And I had gotten back home and I remember just deciding like I'm going to figure out what works for me. I'm going to figure out a way to love my body fully, and that means I'm going to go to yoga, I'm going to go to jiu-jitsu, I'm going to do all of these things, and then I'm going to take out everything I don't need, but I'm going to try everything.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like you start over. So I had all of this stuff trapped in my mind, trapped in my body. And then I just purged it physically. I purged it all out with the throw up. And I remember seeing that this throw up meant so much more. And it's
Mm.
maybe is very confusing for people that don't know about the way ayahuasca works, but the purging that is done is you are physically, the manifestation of the purge is so much more. I remember throwing up and being like, I'm throwing up all of this eating disorder stuff that was trapped
The
inside me.
bad vibes, right?
The
That's how I look
bad
at it.
vibes. Yeah. And when you're throwing out the bad vibes, you're like, oh my God, like I actually threw out the bad vibes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense, but it's so true. And it's really, everyone has their own healing journey. But because I honor this medicine so much, I feel that it would be such a disservice for me not to first of
Talk
all,
about it.
talk about it and like admit the darkness that I had before and the ability through plant medicines that I was able to discover myself and heal
Right.
in such a clear way. Because after that, I didn't do ayahuasca for a year and a half. Like this, you need a full integration period. And if you want to do it again, do it again. If you don't want to do it again, you don't do it again. But I don't drink. Sometimes I'll smoke marijuana, like I am as clear as I would like to be. And that doesn't mean I'm like sitting in my bed. I don't like people. I'm going out to bars with all of my amazing drunk friends that I love so much. But I'm also standing in my truth. And I know for me, this is what works.
Right. Right. It's yeah, very, very fascinating. What the other thing I would like to talk about is that, there's a lot of practitioners, nurses, doctors, be like, well, why, go the traditional route. And so I'm going to just pipe in a little bit there. There are so many patients that we take care of that do the traditional route, that do the medications, that do the psychotherapy, that do the cognitive behavioral therapy, that do all of the holistic alternative things. I'm one of them. I did it all. I did all the traditional stuff, but there was something missing, something hugely missing. And the missing piece of it was my connection to spirit, because over time, what happened with me, with the sickness, with the chronic debilitating illness, with these different traumas that I experienced, you go into fight or flight, right? You want to protect what is, and change is hard, and you get scared. So these plants, including psychedelics and cannabis, allow us to experience something different, allow us to experience a healing that can happen very, very fast. Instead of, me being in therapy for 25 years, and granted it helped, but my mental, emotional, spiritual healing was completely 100% upped, amped, happened. The dots started to connect a little bit more. And how I approach things is a little bit different. It's quicker. It's a lot quicker, as opposed to, because I feel like more areas of my brain are connected, whereas before they were dulled, they were dampened down. I wasn't experiencing the best version of myself because of these traditional pharmaceuticals, was completely suppressing my spirit, right? And whereas these plants, cannabis, and some of these other psychedelics actually enhance my spirit. And when my spiritual self is enhanced, it allows my mental, emotional, and physical self to feel more cared for and nurtured. It's inviting spirit into your life through plants. And you don't have to, like you had said, you don't have to keep doing psychedelics. You can have one experience, you can have multiple experiences, but the key is to make sure each of your experiences get integrated into your life, so you can use the tools that you learn to actually make a difference in what you're doing.
Right. And that's such an important point, that these ceremonies with the ayahuasca always say that the ceremony begins.
Yes, will you tell your experience of the ceremony?
Yeah,
That'll be fun.
The ceremony and did begin, though, only when it was done. Like that's when the real work is done. Yeah, it was very intense. I drank the medicine and it was dark. I remember laying on the ground and begging for Aya to take it easy on me. And I was begging because the pain that you feel, or the pain that I felt rather, was so intense. And what it was the unfelt pain that I used things to numb myself out with, that I was unwilling to feel.
There you go. That makes sense. So it brought up stuff that you didn't want to look at.
And I wasn't willing to, until I was laying in a little ball and seeing it and crying. And then I was back in my mother's womb, rebirth. And then I was communicating with the plants. So when it was really hard for me, I was saying, please take it easy. Then she would take it easy on me. Then we would go back into the darkness. And what was so beautiful about it was that she was listening to me. And someone had said this to me before, that Aya has a sense of humor. So even in the dark, even in the darkest of the dark of the dark, I would go through it and then I'd be laughing. So I saw all parts of myself. I was crying, I was throwing up, but then I was also hysterically laughing. And then I was singing at the top of my lungs. And my intention for that ceremony was to connect to my soul. And in order to connect to my soul, I had to do such dark, deep, deep work to get there. And then I found my voice. And by finding my voice, I had to sing at the top of my lungs. And by singing at the top of my lungs, it released so much more that I was hiding from the universe of who I was. And in all of the aspects of who I am, the humor, the ha ha ha, the crying, it connected me to myself. And I would also just like to add that it was so dark and I honor it so much. And the plant is so sacred that I imagine that everyone can be addicted to something, like someone can be addicted to like eating foam on the ground, those crazy shows. But I do want to say that this is so sacred that it's really, really impossible, at least for me, to ever be addicted to something like this, because it's so dark that you go into it. And for me, I honor it so much that, okay, everything I just learned, I'm going to need to integrate, and I'm going to listen to these lessons that I was taught, and I'm really going to become a better person for
Quick
myself.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you have someone help you to integrate?
Yes, I have a huge network of people that I am constantly communicating with, and people that I'm able to share my experiences with who also have had their own different experiences. I journal, I listen to music, I did what I needed to do. And then I also cut out a lot of the things that I didn't need. As I mentioned before, it took a while, but I'm not drinking. Like, I'm just never probably going to drink. Maybe I'll have a glass of wine if I'm in Italy, if I can ever get there again at a winery.
Right.
But there's just things that I'm still integrating.
Yeah.
And everyone says that the first ceremony is usually the most intense, and that's what I needed to shift my life and myself. And I remember, like, my family thought I was going nuts because, like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this thing? And then they see now the changes that have been made, that they can't say anything negative about this plant because I'm a completely different person than I was before. And it's the changes. And of course, initially there's going to be pushback against people who think or only know one other way.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. Like, this is something that, and the things that I do as well, I'm always like, okay, so if I had a child, is this something I would want my child to do? 100%, 100%.
Yeah, really, like, to look at all areas of yourself from, and just, you're so young. How old are you?
I'm 25. I'm going to be 26 in December.
So you're very, very young. And so I'm just going to have to say is, like, you're way ahead of the game.
Thanks. I often feel like I'm way behind, but
no. I mean, I'm in my 50s, and I literally just, I started my plant psychedelic entheogen experiences in my 50 when I turned 50. So, it was interesting. Cannabis and these other health and wellness tools and all of these other modalities that I've tapped into really kind of came together and opened up the door to the psychedelic piece of it. So I could just take it to the next level, right? Because I truly felt like I knew I wanted to be more, do more, help more people. But I know a big part of it was I needed to become authentic, real, raw, vulnerable, and heal parts of myself that I didn't want to look at. So once you're able to look at that and really get clear with your own vulnerability, your own ego, the things that you don't feel good about and the things that you don't want to share. And once you're able to get that out in the open, do you know how freeing it is? It's like, you don't got anything on me. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing to hide anymore. And to be able to be free of hiding yourself, all of yourself, even those areas that you don't want people to know, and opening that door up allows people to be more of who they are, and for them to get inspired to really delve deep into their own healing potential and modalities, that are available to them. So yeah, so I truly commend you for being on that journey at such a young age. Truly, like, you are ahead of the game, and you're definitely one of the future healers. And through having your podcast, which we're going to lead into right now. So I want to hear about beautiful people and what compelled you to start doing broadcast journalism and creating your podcast.
Yes. So I love having conversations and learning about people because I feel like we're all each other's mirrors. So I was always finding these unique people in life and having these amazing conversations, and then going back to other people that I know and saying to them, like, I met this person and like, this is what they told me about their life. Isn't that so cool? And as it continued to happen, I was like, wow, I'm really dimming the light of these people that have these incredible stories that I'm trying to replicate. So I was on a friend's podcast when I was in Sedona, Arizona, and I got so many messages after being on their podcast. I actually talked about ayahuasca, and they were saying to me, you need to have your own podcast. So I was like, yeah, you're right. So I started it, and now it's continues to evolve. And I'm just really inspired by people's healing journeys and the path that they take to discovering themselves, because as I'm continuing to get older, I see that people are so lost, and after college, in life, lost discovering who they are, and therefore numbing out with so many different substances, which is fine. I have been there, I have done that, and that's okay. But we're so lucky to be alive and to be humans that I hope that for people who I plant the seeds with in discovering themselves with this podcast, it will spark a light. Like, I went on a date with some guy who told me about the 10-day silent meditation retreat. That was the seed that was planted for me, like, with these platforms and with the green nurses. Yeah.
It was the ripple effect that led you to the next thing, because you were open,
Exactly.
That's the key to healing. Be open to everything, believe nothing, and do your own searching and journeying.
Exactly.
Right? And discover your own truth, which is so fascinating. So I do love, you do have a quote that I love. And you mentioned it about mirroring. The more I learn about others, I discover more of myself. We are mirrors. So what does that mean to you?
I feel like the more I can understand myself, the more I love other people. And when other people are having a bad day or are feeling a little bit off, I'm able to love that part of them because I see myself in that.
Yes.
And I feel like that's so important, because I feel like in the past I was really scared of people's traumas because I was scared of my own. Yeah. And I see that now, that my fear of others before was just a reflection of me not willing to see myself and the darkness that is going to exist no matter what.
So that's really important. Just want to reiterate that. So, basically just to rehash what you said is that, the whole mirroring concept is, once you got to know yourself and understand some of the things that you, like the darkness inside, some of those ego-based stories, and you were able to love and embrace that part of you, other people's traumas, when they are presented to you in a way, is not so overwhelming, because you see the human part of who they are. Mm-hmm. and you've been there because you've processed some of your dark humanity. And there's nothing wrong with the dark. That's the thing, is, in order for us to understand light, there's got to be dark, this polarity, and having the understanding to be able to differentiate between one and the other. So I truly am really, really impressed with this.
I'll also just say that someone once told me that darkness is misguided light. And I've taken that with me in a lot of the places that I've gone, where it's just misguided light.
Well, here's the other thing, is you can always light a match.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things too, is I was working in a trauma recovery program. And one of the tools was, when you feel like you're in a dark spot, you can pull out your virtual lighter, pull out your virtual flashlight. And when you're looking at the light, you look at the light right here where you are right now. You don't have to shine the light on everyone else. It's the light lighting that flick, turning on that phone flashlight, turning on the other flashlight. It just helps you to get focused and grounded right here and right now, because it's the only thing you can see. So it's a really, really cool tool, which I really like. So this has been an amazing podcast. I'm very, very excited. Thank you, Elise Bronstein from Beautiful People Podcast. How do people find you?
Yep. So you can type in Beautiful People Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everywhere. You can find me on Facebook, Elise Bronstein. It's spelled like Alice. It's a whole story. I'm Russian. I'm also ALICE.BRON.1 on Instagram. That's where I post a lot of videos for my podcast. The platform is growing. Connect.
Good. All right, so good. So what we're going to have in the comment section here is we're going to have all of the contact information for you, which will be right below this podcast, which I will put up when we are done. So I'm going to end this, and then you and I will talk. And I'm just going to end with, my favorite 100% tagline. And this is truly the reason why I bring all of these awesome people on these podcasts, is to share compelling stories of healing. Because I'm hoping that someone heard something today that's going to trigger them to investigate, to look into, to question their beliefs, and to start to seek other means that may help them. So it's truly really about, I'm going to end it. What's it really all about? It's about living your best life.